and welcome to the Value Investor TV podcast. This is the podcast that helps you grow your wealth and become financially independent. My name is Hari, and today we're going to be talking about DraftKings. Been a while since we've recorded a podcast. I've been a little bit busy, so I decided now was a good time to get back on track. There's lots of interesting things going on in the value investing world, one of the users had requested a company called DraftKings, so we wanted to cover that here on the episode. If you are interested in reaching out and listening or learning about a company, you can email us at info@valueinvestor.org, and we will put that on the list. If you're also interested in getting our checklist, same email address, info@valueinvestor.org. As always, we really appreciate your listening, and if you're on YouTube, we'd also really appreciate it if you make like the video, comment, subscribe, we of course we really appreciate any support that you guys can provide us. Before we get started talking about DraftKings, we'll just do a little disclaimer. This is the Value Investor TV podcast. We are not financial advisors. We don't know your specific financial situation. So please consult with the appropriate advisor before making any financial decisions. All right, so let's get right into it. We're going to talk about this company, DraftKings. Their ticker is DKNG, and they are a very interesting business. If you are a sports fan, especially of the NFL, you've probably seen their ads on TV. It's a daily fantasy sports site, which is how they started, but they've now grown into lots of different areas. So we always focus on using a checklist so that we when we evaluate companies, and the reason for that is that it allows us to stay focused on what is important without getting distracted in the details, and also getting distracted by a company sales pitch. So, the first question that we always look at is, what does the company do? And as we said, it's a daily fantasy sports site. But what they look at it for, from their perspective is, in their own words, they try to make life more exciting by creating the world's favorite real money games and betting expenses. So with the tech that they've created, they do what's called peer-to-peer competitions in their world, where you are not betting against the house, but against other players in your pool or in your bracket. And then they started building out a gambling site as well with their sportsbook, which is not legal in most states. But has been, is slowly progressing, and they expect it to grow into, multiple areas. So they want to, so that's really kind of what their business is. But there's a lot of things that go on with a business like this that, you may not really, pay attention to. There are various channels that they operate in. They have the business to consumer channel, which is daily fantasy sports, the sportsbook, and what's called iGaming. So daily fantasy sports is the peer-to-peer play sports where you're betting against your pool or your group. DraftKings essentially establishes the score and the contest rules, and then they distribute the prize money. So the entry fee minus the amount paid out is equal to their revenue. The sportsbook is a traditional sportsbook. You're betting against a score or a wagering against fixed odds, and then DraftKings pays out when the user wins. So they want to be on both sides of the bet and have an equal amount of people betting on each side, in order for them to make money on every transaction. And then you have a traditional casino setup, which is considered iGaming, or in their parlance, which is your traditional roulette, blackjack, that kind of stuff. And then they also license their games. They also will have advertising and sponsorship revenue. depending on the sport or the demand. And then they will custom build games for a fixed fee, so if you want to host your own type of event. But they do have a business to business kind of setup, which is sports betting and iGaming, where they are, essentially licensing that service, their technology to support that. The nature of their business is very seasonal. So most sports in America have a heavy Q4 amount of sporting events in Q4. So college football, NBA, the NFL, and Major League Baseball all have events at the end of the year, which allows them to kind of, generate more revenue. So, switching gears here a little bit, what does this business do translate into a competitive advantage? And I think this is kind of where, it's very important to tailor your arguments based on what the business does into, how does this actually translate into them making money? And so we look at those based on, 5 different categories: brand moat, network effects, switching costs, and a low cost moat. So the interesting thing about DraftKings is, they have relationships with the NFL, at PGA, Major League Baseball, and also partnerships through an investment from Fox and with ESPN, and are the exclusive providers of their content to those groups, and also with Vox, Bleacher Report, and they also provide intellectual property to other services, which allows those partnerships to kind of provide a better moat. So I would really consider their moat on the brand side more than anything else. Network effects and switching cost, I think there's network effects. Really, you don't have any advantages by investing against or betting against other people. In this case, there may be more opportunities for games, so that may attract more people to come to daily fantasy on DraftKings, but hard to say, because it is a commodity business. So there may also be some switching costs there because you already have an account. You may not want, be reluctant to open 5 accounts. But I don't think they have a low cost moat. Intangible assets are really just the brand and those partnerships. So, when we look at how durable is the competitive advantage, I really struggle with a company like this. I don't feel like it's a too hard problem here as much as I don't know that this business is interesting enough for me to, when we start looking at the financials, to get really, interested in it. So I'm struggling with what are the, the benefits of this kind of company and how durable is the competitive advantage. But with that being said, I would propose that, they are a new player in the space. They have some advantages that, being a first mover and that kind of stuff. But when we look at the revenue growth and the user growth, I find it a little bit hard to believe that this is going to be a long-term sustainable business with, with great returns for an investor. So switching to or getting to the next comment here, what is the long-term prospects? So I think daily fantasy sports is going to be always part of, the sports culture. Gambling has always been around, even if it wasn't legal. It's always been present now. So it's being, allowed in many states, or 4 states, and it's probably going to grow over time. There's definitely some runway there for daily fantasy and gambling to, to continue to grow going forward. But that being said, this is not a business that I just get super excited about. I just don't see that there's a net benefit to the to all parties involved. And what I mean by that is a good business provides value for shareholders, value for the employees, and value for the customers. And in a lot of ways, this is kind of just shifting money around, right? You're paying in money, somebody's taking a cut of it, and it's being handed over to somebody else. They're not providing a service that adds, value to society. And you could argue that that's true for a lot of things, but in order for anything to be a long-term sustainable thing, you're going to have to provide value to to society in a meaningful way. And you see that with most businesses. You buy a phone, you get more value from the phone than the cash that you spent on it. When you get to something like this, you're paying money with the intent that you're going to get more money out of it. And so gambling tends to not provide a net benefit to society, because you have a lot of people who have, control issues and things like that will become addicts and so forth. And that ends up destroying, the net benefit that you get, because people will give up, get addicted, and that's what you're essentially making. So, you can make the argument that, cigarettes fall under that kind of same, thing. And I would say this is not necessarily a moral argument, but there will be a point at which, just from a pure, amoral standpoint, right? We're not looking at the morality of gambling and that kind of thing. It's just, it doesn't provide a benefit to all parties involved, and you end up losing money, gaining money, so you're just kind of shifting the money around instead of actually providing, value to all parties involved. So I know that's not the best, great explanation, but to me, that's always kind of, there's a limit on the number of people that are going to want to do this. And there's going to be a lot of people who try it a few times and then quit. So we'll see how it goes. I may be, dead wrong on this, but, I have concerns about this as a long-term, runway. Does a company require a lot of capital reinvestment to maintain its business? So, my concern with this is also that they are going to have to continue to promote their business heavily as people, as people put money in, and, they lose interest, or the sports season, lapses, and then during the summer, there's not as much going on, or the springtime, then they come back to it in the fall, they may have forgotten, which is how I know a lot of people who play regular fantasy sports. There's some people that are very into it and some people who do it casually. And, it doesn't lend itself to constant, review of what's going on. Right. And so that what you may end up having is, people will, bet for a season because their friends are doing it. Then they forget about it the next year. So on. That's certainly been my experience. So what they need to do then is to continue to advertise to keep it going. And so I think there is a reinvestment mode here that, or reinvestment need, because as competition comes up, you're going to have to also outcompete them with, advertising dollars. So does a business have a favorable relationship with the everybody involved? Does it lead to a net benefit for all parties? So with customers, so as I said, and I talked a little bit about this in terms of, the net benefit to the customer here is that they get to, indulge in their sporting event, put money on the game, see how it goes. It's again not a long-term benefit. There are lots of people who can do it casually, but there's a lot of people who can do it, get addicted. But you're just shuffling the money around. Nobody wins, in these games, because they are designed to, essentially extract money, and they want you to just continue to bet. Do their suppliers have a net benefit? Yes. I would say there's no issues there. No issues with the employees that I know of. Regulators is always a concern, because, gambling has been traditionally been adjudicated, or illegal in most states, except for, New Jersey and Nevada. And ironically, the online gambling is not legal in Nevada right now, unless you have, I believe it's unless you have a casino there. So DraftKings doesn't have that the online gambling aspect of their business there. So I think the kind of the moral of this story here is that you have a business that is not it doesn't promote growth in society like a product or a service does, where you get more benefit out of it. Again, you're going to just kind of shift money around. So I don't see, this is why you don't have massive I mean, we will see how it does, because the closest analogy here is in England, where they have sports books and things like that. But again, it's such a commoditized product that it's hard for me to really look at it and say, yeah, this is going to just, take over the world there. I'm going to come to a close here on the first part of this DraftKings. And, I want to remind everybody, if you are interested in learning about a company, just like we talked about here with DraftKings, email us at info@valueinvestor.org. Reach out to us or comment on this YouTube video. And please, like and subscribe as well. We would really appreciate it. It helps us with the YouTube algorithm to get our content out there. And well, thank you very much. And stay tuned for the next part of DraftKings, where we talk about the financials and the valuation. All right. Thanks. We'll see you in the next episode.